top 10, way too early, 2024. We're entering a new era. It's the 12-team playoff era. I'm going to go 10-1 at the end. I'm going to give you a bunch of teams that I was debating right here at number 10. I had to land on one, and even though they did not finish great in terms of their bowl performance, and I know some might roll their eyes at this a little bit, but with what they've got coming back, with what they did on their coaching staff and what they did in the transfer portal, I'm a big believer in Penn State at number 10. This is a really talented team, and for a lot of years now, at least for 2 years now, I've been talking about this class that was sophomores, now is going to be true juniors, that is going to be formidable, to say the least. This was one of James Franklin's best recruiting classes that are about to be juniors. And so here we go. And this is a team that maybe more so than any other throughout the country is excited for the 12-team format. You see, they never made the 4-team playoff, as you know, but in a hypothetical, if you go back and basically overlay the 12-team format over what just happened the last decade in college football, Penn State would have made 6 playoffs if we would have had that 12-team setup. That's the most of any team that didn't make a playoff. That talented class, as I was talking about in 2022, they're all going to be true juniors. Drew Aller, the quarterback, Nick Singleton and Katron Allen, Abdul Carter, the linebacker. These guys are really good players, really good players. There was some things that they had to go address, and one of them was their offense. Their offense just wasn't good enough, in particular with as talented as they were. They're going to lose maybe the best offensive tackle in this year's draft this spring, Olu Fashanu. They had 2, really good running backs, a former 5-star quarterback. They should have been better on offense, okay? Now they're going to go out and get a new coordinator, and I really like this hire. It's just hard to pronounce his name. Andy Kotelnicki, who was the coordinator at Kansas. And then they also got a new coordinator on defense. That wasn't necessarily because they wanted to, but because they had to. Manny Diaz, he got a head job, goes down to Duke. So they bring in a new coordinator. And you know what? Really like this move. Really like this move. Now, is it long-term? I'm not sure. I'm not sure if it's long-term. But they went out and got Tom Allen, the former head coach at Indiana. He's got a defensive background, and he comes in, and this dude has a lot of energy, a lot of positive energy, and now he's going to be the coordinator on the defensive side, and that'll be aggressive. Kotelnicki is known for his creative and efficient offenses. Think about what Kansas has done over the last couple of years. It's been 11 years with Lance Leipold, all the way back to Wisconsin Whitewater. You know how I feel about these guys that cut their teeth and have success and know how to win regardless of level. I think that translates. I think that success will translate for Andy Kotelnicki. I think that the offense will be pretty good. Would it surprise people to guess who was the top of the country in yards per play over the last 2 seasons? I think that this would surprise a lot of people. Number 1, Oregon. That's maybe not a surprise. LSU, number 2. That's how good their offense was. USC, everyone would assume that Lincoln Riley's offense is going to be up there. Georgia is number 4. And guess who's number 5? Kansas. Despite, by the way, Jalen Daniels not playing basically half the games. That's how good Andy Kotelnicki is as a coordinator. I'm a big believer that he's going to improve that offense, get the best out of Drew Aller, those running backs, and now they're going to have some transfers coming in, namely Julian Fleming, former number 1 wide receiver in the country, left Pennsylvania and went to Ohio State. Now he's transferring from the Buckeyes and he's going to be at Penn State. They desperately need an outside threat. Tom Allen, the defensive coordinator now, new defensive coordinator at Penn State, he's going to be the next in a line now. Brent Pry, excellent. Manny Diaz, excellent. Tom Allen, going to need to be excellent. That defense has been really good for the last couple of years, and I would assume that they would continue to be that way. With Abdul Carter in there, they get A.J. Harris, the transfer. He comes in from Georgia. Jalen Kimber, he comes from Florida. Started his career at Georgia. So then you start looking at the schedule. I know I've talked a lot about Penn State, but again, this is a team that I think could make some noise. They've got a tough 5-game stretch right in the middle of the year. They're home to UCLA, at USC, at Wisconsin, home to Ohio State, home to Washington. That's their difficult stretch. If they can manage it, then I would assume, and this is why I've put them at number 10, that this would be a team with a legitimate playoff chance, if not outright, definitely in the playoff next year. Let's go to number 9. This was a little bit tough for me. To be candid, I wanted to put Penn State at 9, but the way that they finished It just didn't allow me to do this. So at number 9, I'm going to go with Notre Dame. A lot of this just is this sense that I believe in what Marcus Freeman is doing. Now, it's been a bit of a rocky road in this offseason. They lose some guys that are hard to replace. Joe Ald at left tackle. Audric Estime out of the backfield. Hartman, obviously, at quarterback. Fisher, the other tackle. But I really believe in what they're doing offensively because they bring in Mike Denbrock to be their new OC. Now, he was at Notre Dame with Brian Kelly, then went down there, was the OC at LSU. I just told you the success that LSU has been having over the last couple of years. Number 2 in the country in yards per play over the last 2 years. So, like, this guy can coordinate. There's no doubt. He was a Broyles finalist, led LSU to the number 1 offense in the country. Jaden Daniels wins the Heisman Trophy. So he's going to come in and replace Gerard Parker. He left to be the head coach at Troy. Riley Leonard, Duke transfer, comes in to be the quarterback. I think Riley's a good player. They got wide receiver Chris Mitchell from FIU. They needed that because they lost some of their wide receiver depth to the portal. But this team really should be defensive-led and very good on the defensive side. Again, you would expect that from a Marcus Freeman team. They get a big boost when Xavier Watts decided to come back. They've got Howard Cross. He's back for another year. And then, as you know, and I think USC proved this out this last year, it really is about the schedule. They've got a tricky opener. They've got to go to Texas A&M. This is going to be A&M's first game with Mike Elko. You can imagine that that's going to be 1, hot, 2, hostile, 3, lots of energy. If they get through that, then there's a real path for them to be 8-0 when they host Florida State. They'll finish the season at USC. Technically only 3 true road games at A&M, at Purdue, and at USC. They've got 2 neutral games. They've got Georgia Tech and Atlanta, and then Navy. That one's at MetLife. So what am I trying? Manageable. I think Notre Dame at 9 is going to have a really good opportunity to be in the 12-team playoff. Number 8. God, I wanted to put this team higher. I should have, too. You know what? I'm going to start number 8 with an apology. I believe I'm selling this team short. I really do. I think that this is, you know what? This could be bulletin board for this material. Bulletin board for this team, not material. Bulletin board material. You get what I'm trying to say. Number 8, Utah. That's right. They're back. Death taxes in Utah football. If this team doesn't get decimated by injuries, I mean decimated. Now, every team out there is going to be like, Joel, we had injuries too. Look up Utah this year. They got just crushed by injury. If you go back to the years that they didn't get crushed, even though they dealt with injuries, when they didn't get crushed by injuries, double-digit wins each of their last 3 full seasons, okay? They still won 8 a year ago, but then here's the kicker. They get Cam Rising back. They get Keithy back. Like, the defense you know is going to be good. That's a plug-and-play defense. It's always tough. They're always good at the line of scrimmage. Cam Rising is going to be in his 7th season in college football. Won the Pac-12 in each of his last 2 healthy years. You think this is not going to be a good team? This team is going to be excellent. They don't have to go through the gauntlet that was the Pac-12 a year ago. They're now moving into the Big 12. They should be the preseason favorite. And remember, they've got a legit path to get one of those top 4 seeds because the top 4 seeds go to a team that wins their conference. So the Big 12 champ is likely going to be a top 4 seed and a bye and be into that quarterfinal round in the new playoff. Good chance that's Utah, folks. Good chance that that's Utah. I love this idea of experienced quarterbacks over the last couple of years really running things. Look at Penix. McCarthy had a bunch of starts under his belt. Bo Nix had a bunch of starts under his belt. These guys, I mean, Quinn Ewers had a bunch of starts under his belt. Rising's going to have 1 million starts under his belt. 20 months out from that bad knee, so I don't think the injury status is going to be a thing at all. They just added Dorian Singer. I know he had a down year at USC, but he was terrific at Arizona the year before. I look at this as easily one of the best teams in the country, as easily a top 4 team in next year's playoff. That's why I think 8 might be too low. I think it's a much more manageable schedule. You look at their toughest road games are going to be at Oklahoma State, at Colorado, which could be interesting based on what Colorado is going to do at the line of scrimmage, and then at UCF. I mean, you look at Utah's schedule versus like Michigan's schedule or Texas's schedule, and you're like, oh, well, yeah, clearly. Utah is going to be damn good. Now, they lose Sione Vake, Devon Vele, Cole Bishop, but again, like this team replaces those style players. They develop as good as anybody. Maybe the best development program right now in college football is Michigan. You'd have to say that in the conversation for the second best development program in the country is Utah. They're just so good. I love Utah next year. I really do. Again, I'm just going to say it right now. In my way too early, unless something drastic happens, there's no way that Utah is going to start as low as 8 in my actual preseason poll. I think in this offseason, through spring football, through whatever coaching news we might get at teams above them, teaser, I think Utah will be higher than that as I get into this preseason. Next up, number 7. And a lot of this is just because they've earned it, because they're going to lose a lot of players, a lot of their core players, but this has been, along with Georgia, the best program in college football over the last couple of years, the defending national champion, Michigan Wolverines at number 7. And I know that this is low, but again, they're going to lose a lot of players. As of recording this, we do not have Jim Harbaugh news. I have said this before. I don't have any inside source, but I do believe if I had to bet my own money, my gut is telling me that Harbaugh is going to go to the National Football League. If that's the case, I would expect Michigan to hire Sharon Moore, who was basically the head coach for the bulk of that stretch run as Harbaugh served the 3-game suspension at the end of the year. Sharon is 1-0 against Ohio State. Now, if he doesn't leave, great. I would love if Jim Harbaugh stayed at Michigan. I hope that he does. But in the event that he doesn't, Michigan is going to have to replace their quarterback, their head coach, and several key pieces, not only on the offensive line, but throughout the offense and even on the defensive side. They're going to have a very different group, in particular on offense, a year from now. J.J. McCarthy's moving on. Blake Corum moving on. Roman Wilson moving on. Cornelius Johnson moving on. The entire starting 5 on the offensive line, they're going to be gone. They had great depth, and I'm not suggesting that they're not going to have great players, but they're going to be unproven. Is it going to be Alex Orji or somebody else at quarterback? We don't know. That's a lot of leadership to lose. That being said, Michigan is, along with Utah, but is the definitively best development team in college football. You don't win a national championship the way that they won it without being the best developmental team in the country, and they are certainly that. So they're going to be fine on the offensive line. And then if you actually play it out in your head, what could the offense look like? Well, you would expect them to be at least better than serviceable on the offensive line. Again, they're great in terms of development, toughness. They're going to be pretty good on the offensive line. Now, are they going to be great? I'm not sure, but they're going to be pretty good. Donovan Edwards is coming back at running back. Kalel Mullings, did you see those rushes that he had in the playoff? I know he didn't get used a lot, but man, Mullings is a guy that if he gets more carries, he could be a real factor. And then Alex Orji, did you see him carry the football? They're going to run the football really well. I mean, to think that they won't and they'll fall off the cliff, I think is totally short-sighted. They develop too well. Their identity is such, along with, again, no sources. But if Harbaugh moves on, I do believe it'll be Sharon Moore, and that identity will remain in a lot of ways. I think that's a big boost that Donovan Edwards came back. The defense should be really good again. I know that they lose a lot of pieces, but remember, they basically had two deep at the defensive line. A lot of those young tackles are going to be back. Kenneth Grant, Mason Graham. They're going to be really good. You get Will Johnson in the secondary, Rod Moore, Makari Page, Isaiah Stewart, Derek Moore. Like their defense is going to be really good. So this is going to be a team that's going to have their identity intact. It's just a matter of, can they play at the top end? And we'll see. So I give them that number 7 ranking. They got Jayshon Barham out of the transfer portal. Huge pickup. Linebacker from Maryland. Really good player. And so Michigan right now is going to be at number 7 as of right now. And we'll see that news on Jim Harbaugh. As far as their schedule, I've referenced it before, by the way. They've got a home game against Texas, USC, Oregon. Then they've got road games against Ohio State and Washington. Okay, then. That's a tough schedule. Somebody's going to be USC. The schedule just crushed USC this year. Crushed them. That'll happen again. As these two super conferences grow, somebody's losing 3 games. The difference is that team, as long as they win the right ones or prove that they can play at the top end, probably still gets in the playoff. Probably. Now, we don't know that to be absolute, but probably. Coming in at number 6, the Portal Kings. Not talking about Colorado. I'm talking about Ole Miss. Ole Miss got some significant talent in the transfer portal. Jackson Dart, not a transfer, but back at quarterback. And this is what I'll reiterate, as I did with Cam Rising. These experienced quarterbacks, they pay off in a big way. Look at how he played in the bowl game. He's going to be a third-year starter. He has now 28 starts over his last 2 years. And he's going to be in the middle of, surrounded by a lot of talent. Now, they lost Judkins, which shocked a lot of people when he transferred. They got Bentley. Ulysses Bentley. He'll likely be the primary back next year. He's backed up Judkins the last 2 years after he transferred in from SMU. He's averaged nearly 6 yards per carry in those 2 years. So you would imagine, while they might not be as explosive as they were with Judkins, like they still should be pretty good. Their leading receiver, Trey Harris, he's coming back. He's going to be paired with South Carolina transfer Juice Wells. That's a big-time wide receiver duo. Lane's got something going. You look at the losses that they had this year, and you're like, okay, I can see it. I can see them building. I think Lane Kiffin is a hell of a football coach. He's not just a great troller on Twitter, although he's like unbelievable at that. Like, he's built something that, again, I'm going to be very surprised if this team is not in the playoff. And along with Penn State, this is the perfect type of team that you look at and you're like, the expanded playoff is perfect for them. They don't have to go win their division. They don't have to go win the SEC. And good thing that that's not a thing for them anymore. They don't have to deal with the division. They just got to go out there and take care of business. And if they do that, they should be in line for a playoff berth. Schedule, as far as an SEC schedule, not terrible. They do have to play Georgia, but they get them at home. They've got Oklahoma, but they also get them at home. And then they've got LSU on the road. It is backloaded. That's one thing, is like you're going to have these certain schedules that get tough in stretches for teams, and they're going to have to play really well during those stretches. So if you looked at Ole Miss's schedule, you would see that they're likely going to be 6-0 to start things off. And then they play LSU in October, and it kind of ramps up from there. So we'll see how they finish the season. But again, they don't have to be perfect. If I'm an an Ole Miss fan, if I'm a Penn State fan, I am psyched for this season and this new era of college football. Thank you for watching the Joel Klatt Show YouTube channel. And if you liked this clip, make sure to like it and subscribe to the channel, and you can stay up to date on all of my college football coverage.